Payback time for him.
Yeah. So, yeah, I guess it's kind of interesting because they took over his area. But, all right, do you have any questions since you're kind of here? This is, like, there's a lot of stuff going on in Iowa right now. What do you, play devil's advocate or something?
No, I guess one of the questions I would have, I think someone here said that the state commission really has to approve these permits unless there's some proof that there's something wrong with the application. I guess I'd like to know a little bit more about that, if anybody has any information about that.
Well, yeah, what we hear all the time is, this is kind of going on with like Wayne County right now, is the supervisors have taken off points, but the DNR could go back and say, actually, we disagree, they submitted enough paperwork, looks good to me, we have to approve it. Like, they don't, there is some discretion to say, because what they'll do is they'll take points, and if they take points for a question, they have to put a description of why they deserve those points. And so we always argue that their description's not good enough, and DNR argues that their description is good enough. And so it comes down to that. DNR will approve. They always say, well, if they met all of the requirements of the law, we have to approve it. And it's like the 2 sentences isn't good enough for me to guarantee that the manure's not going to come out of the cracked pit.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but on that master matrix, they can choose, they just have to get 50% of the points, and they can choose which questions they want to answer, and so they don't have to answer some of the questions. And so it's less than a week. It is grandstanding, really, to say, look, we're doing something. Wouldn't you love it if you took a test at school and you got to choose which questions you answered and you only had to make 50% to pass? I mean, that's ridiculous. It's shameful.
So you're really saying that the state law is stacked in favor of agriculture?
Yeah.
Totally.
It's interesting too, because we have precedent documents where like we always turn them in. So if we're trying to take points off number 12, which happens to be that the manure storage structure is, there's actually a storage structure that the manure is going in. We always take points off because we don't think that they ever do good descriptions of the manure pit. And we have proof of when there was a different DNR director that they would agree with us and they would deny points based on that. But now that we have Director Gipp, we have a Branstad appointed DNR director, now he always takes the side of the industry. So it does definitely, like, in the past, the DNR agreed with us, and now they don't. Now they're just saying, well, if it meets the law, we can approve it.
So in the manure pits, the concrete has to be 2 inches thick. On a city sidewalk, the concrete has to be 4 inches thick.
Are you saying inches or?
Inches, no, inches.
Oh, 2 inches?
Yes, that's our concrete person on our, has talked about this. 2 inches, look at the city sidewalks. You know, he said concrete gets old, it dries out, it becomes porous, and it cracks. So it's not if, but when will it crack? 2 inches.
But that wouldn't be enough to support the above ground building. 2 inches, I think it's a little thicker than that.
Yeah.
Well, that's what Tom Willett
Yeah,
told me.
and I think
Is you think it's,
Tom was mistaken, I think.
okay, all right,
Maybe
well
he
then don't
misspoke.
quote that, but, you know, even 4 inches is
Well, the
not
other
very
thing-
much, if you look at city sidewalks.
The other thing that I've noticed about the master matrix when they fill them out, the ones that I've looked at, it's like they go through, you know, and they pick out the ones that they can take points for, and it's like, well, I got 460 points, I guess I'll just put here.
Yeah, right.
You know,
Yeah, right.
They don't like ideally go through each one and take points for
The
the
problem we see with the DNR is for a long time, it was a legislative deal. It's out of our hands.
Right.
Out of our hands.
Right.
Now that we're pushing back and there's rhetoric, well, now all of a sudden Chuck Gibbs says, well, the state's broke. We just had to lay off our field inspectors. We have no one to go out and look. We have no one to check. Excuse after excuse. Let's get some more.
Yeah.
I don't think that they laid off, in this last round where they laid off 8 people at the DNR, it was Gene Tinker, who was the CAFO coordinator. That was his title. I'm not sure that they laid off any inspectors there. But I think to answer your first question, so just the process, if the DNR receives a master matrix application that meets 440 out of 880 points, they don't look at it, they just approve it. They don't do any additional oversight over that application. The only time that they do that is if the county takes away points. Then they will do and, like an inspection to make sure that everything is okay. And even then, when they have, done that, only 2% of all applications have been denied.
And how, over what period of time?
That would have been since the master matrix.
2002.
Okay, so since 2002, they've only declined 2%. Do we know, is there any indication, I mean, do we know how many applications that would be? I mean, if we have a percentage,
You
that
have
must
the
be
number.
total.
We've pulled those numbers, we'd have to go look them up.
Yeah, if you would do that,
Send it to
if
you.
you would give that to me, like the total number and then the number that's been approved and declined.
And we have also, question by question on the master matrix, how many people actually get points for that. So you can see that 99% of people get points for some of these questions. It's
Yeah.
like, then it's too easy.
Right, and that was
Then it's too
DNR's
easy.
own analysis in 2007 where they
Okay,
So the CAFO being built next to us started construction without a storm wastewater permit.
mhm,
So we called and asked for a formal investigation. We later learned that they really didn't fit the need for that because the site is not an acre. But they took down all these mature trees that they didn't need. It is, the earth has been disturbed for over an acre.
mhm.
They also told us that they did send someone out to look, and they probably never send anybody out there again unless there was a complaint. So there is zero oversight
Yeah.
on a facility that's gonna put 8 to 10,000 people size manure on property by my house.
If there's any oversight, a lot of them is the Google Earth.
Yeah.
The what?
I mean,
How do
it
you-
is desktop.
Yeah, how do you expect from Google Earth?
Yeah, exactly.
And I think you might have seen this, that, the DNR, released its annual work plan report, for the EPA.
Mhm.
And part of that work plan required them to do a desktop survey of all of the factory farms in the state. They discovered 5,063 that they did not know about, they were unaware of. They had no idea what size they were, if they were empty, anything like that. And they estimate that a quarter of them would require oversight from the DNR.
Mhm. So you're saying there's more than 5,000 farms they didn't, or
They didn't know
facility
about
they
those
didn't know.
5,063.
Yeah.
Yep.
One thing I really.
Could I add to that thing about the DNR getting involved?
Sure.
I know when we met at our very first initial meeting at the property where we had to stay on the road and we talked to them, the DNR told us that we could call them, but do not just call them and say we thought that there was a leak or something was being sprayed or applied wrong, or that we needed to have solid proof, like dead fish in the stream, because they didn't have enough manpower to come down here and check everything out. I was appalled by that.
Mhm. Do we know the growth curve here? I don't know, do you guys have any statistics to show how many new farms, how many new facilities are coming in every year?
You said it was an average of 380? So-
Over,
And that's everything, that's chickens, hogs,
yeah, okay,
what else is there?
Cattle.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's
So
both medium and large.
That's confinement only,
Yeah.
medium and large, and that's over what period of time?
A year,
And that's an,
new or expanded.
but over how many years did you average? You know?
Well, that 380 is,
I think it was from 2000, I have to look,
Okay.
but, yeah, it's based off of something that DNR sends us every
Okay.
single quarter.
Yeah,
so,
if I could take a look at that.
Sure.
I think it'd be interesting if you took from 2002 till now, so that's the life of the master matrix,
Right.
is 15 years.
Mhm.
If you took there was 212 impaired waterways, now there's more than 750. If you
Mhm.
took that percentage and then projected that growth
Yeah.
over another 15 years, what that
Yeah.
comes out to, that'd be
Well, see, you're onto
interesting.
something that I think is an interesting story that needs to be told, and that is, at some point, you reach a point of saturation of the soil. I mean, there's gotta be a point at which you can only apply so much hog manure on the ground that we're talking about, in which you've reached, I don't know what that is, I mean, it can absorb so much, I mean, there's gotta be a scientific,
That's
way
happening
of,
over in Northwest Iowa.
yeah, there's gotta be a way of saying, take Wright County, for instance, isn't one of the most it's got the most chicken, maybe hog now too. You take that county and you take the land mass and you take how much manure is being placed on that, there's gotta be a level of saturation, right? I mean,
But we're also seeing that with the nitrogen content, the DNR goes by the nitrogen content, when the phosphorus is totally out of range.
Well, they were supposed to go back to the phosphorus. Nitrogen, I was told at one time 92% of the nitrogen is lost before it's put on the field.
yeah.
And that's why corporate ag wanted to go with nitrogen.
So when they say we're doing this for the nitrogen content, that's really not true, because most of it's not really nitrogen you're putting in there, it's phosphorus, which is, of course, what's causing all the algae bloom.
Right.
But there was a presentation recently by, I think it was Paul T.E., or maybe it was, somebody else who works for the DNR. And I'll send you this too, this presentation, because I have a copy of it. But he runs the numbers and says that, Iowa could sustain 45,000 factory farms, given the amount of land that we have and all of that stuff, so I'll send that your way also. Which is just appalling and
How many do you have now?
terrifying.
What's the total now?
It's over 10,000 now.
Oh my gosh, you're saying 4 times what we have now.
Yeah.
4.5 times.
So like I was saying before, I don't know if I mentioned this to you, I've got it in my lease, land lease. You cannot put agricultural waste on my farm. And I think there should be more landowners saying this.
Right.
That would be another reason they couldn't expand.
Is that legally defensible?
You bet.
Has anybody ever challenged it? Yeah.
But I tell you what, it'd be a good challenge.
Yeah.
Because you can, if I don't want you putting your waste on my farm,
Yeah.
if you do, take it to court, but you're not gonna be farming it the next year,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
Just,
Yeah.
I helped a neighbor, his cousin put, chicken litter on his farm. The next year, he was gone. And, I helped in that matter, set him up with somebody that would take over for him. There's, you know, you gotta stand up, you know, if you get a blind, what the hell, you can break their face, you know? It's, what bothers me the most is nobody ever tells anybody that these things are coming in.
Right.
It's, let's put it in at the dark at night, and when they wake up in the morning, there's nothing they can do. That's bad.
Yeah.
That's so they even know it's bad, because they've gotta sneak it in.
That's what I thought was really good about the resolutions that they started, is in Williams, we have a lot of snowbirds, they go south for the winter. And when the county does send out these notices, public hearing on such and such a confinement, it's so small to begin with. We got enough snowbirds in Williams that go south for the winter, they come back, they don't even have a chance. That thing's already constructed, erected, and guess what?
Yeah.
They don't have one little bit of say, as if they have any say now. Give them a fighting chance.
Yeah.
Give them a chance to speak to the owner before it's built and see if they can persuade them. Hey, can you please change the location?
So what's the level of frustration on the part of county officials these days, the ones that want to challenge it? I know there are a lot of county supervisors who don't, and that's probably because they're farmers or their families are farmers, or, I mean, I you know, live in small counties and I understand the dynamic there, but you know, there are some that are challenges, so what's the level of
I believe
frustration?
Wright County, Stan Watney, that did have a big decision-making process for Prestige Farms. Farms a lot of DeCoster now. You know, a lot of these supervisors are in it for themselves.
Right.
They
But
should.
there is a lot of frustration, I think. You know, there are actually 14 counties now that have, either written letters or passed resolutions. I just found out about one yesterday. So that adds up to 14 counties, and then 4 counties that have signed letters of support for our petition, and have sent those to the DNR.
And
So-
what is that petition seek? That's the one that you were talking about today.
Yeah,
Okay.
to strengthen the master matrix.
What do the resolutions say in general, you know, the county resolutions?
They vary, but in general, they're asking the legislature and the DNR to strengthen the master matrix also, and then some of them call for a suspension of factory
Right.
farms.
Right. So this really all ends up in the legislature again to try to get something.
Well, so what, the petition, to strengthen the master matrix, this is something that DNR can do
Be done
through
by
rulemaking. They can do it through rulemaking. So everything that's in the petition is something that they have the authority to do. But there are some things that the legislature would have to do. Like people were talking about this threshold where, you know, applicants are, turning in applications for $24.99 at hogs. which is just one hog under the
Under,
master matrix.
yeah.
That would require legislative action. So there are still things, you know, that we need through the legislature, but that hasn't happened. We've been working at the State House for years and years and years, and nothing has happened, so that's why we're going this route, because we really can't wait any longer. They need to try to, you know, they need to make the master matrix as strong as it can be right now.
Mhm. Okay, and I may ask you later, just to see if you have any idea of other states dealing with this. I'm assuming, North Carolina is that the other large hog state, and maybe Minnesota is probably the next one.
Yeah,
Missouri.
In Illinois, are they dealing with the same stuff that we're dealing with, or do they?
Yeah,
not?
I mean, they have different, rules and regulations,
Mhm.
so, you know, like,
Anyone more protected than our state? I mean,
oh yeah, like.
are we the kind of outlier here where we're just letting it run rampant and nobody's
I
doing
mean,
anything about it?
basically, I think
Yeah.
Illinois is kind of in a really bad situation too.
Okay.
And, you know, Missouri and Minnesota, I believe they both have some form of local control that can keep them at bay, but we don't have that here in Iowa.
Then North Carolina has a moratorium.
Right, that's true.
Is it still in place?
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah, I'll have to check
That's
on
good.
that, but I heard-
What would bothers me the most is like Christensen Brothers Family Farms out in Minnesota, they pay no taxes on the hogs raised in Iowa. I was talking to an ex-legislator out of Worthington, Minnesota, and asked him, I told him, I said, you know, Christensen Brothers Family Farms feeds hogs out in Iowa. Iowa gets no revenue off them hogs except what they pay the young farmer to look at it. And I said, how much do they pay in Minnesota, profit on the taxes? It's the same as Iowa, none. And the only
I'd like to,
thing-
yeah, that's something I wanna ask about when you were talking about that, is like, so when they build one of these barns, there's no additional tax?
No new tax rate.
Why? I mean,
Because
how
Because-
of, pollution control exemption.
No, that's not it. It's there is, a formula that the county assessor goes through that will tell at the end, this amount of money will be, tax revenue from farming.
Mhm.
And this is why you need to talk to the assessor, because it's kind of complicated, but that formula is based on the value of the land, the CSR of the land, the farm program, any federal farm
Right.
program that's involved. So it's all based on land, and even though it's all, well, anyway, so it's all based on land, and when you get to the end, there's this dollar amount, say $5 million for the county.
Mhm.
That's all that they can collect from agriculture.
Mm.
So,
Mm.
if Rose Acres, for instance,
Yeah.
in Adair County, put on an $8 million addition,
Mhm.
yes, they pay taxes, but it's not new revenue. The tax requirements are spread out over all the buildings and all the land in the county, and
Okay.
each farmer pays his own amount. But when they built that $8 million addition, number one, it's a building, see? So there's no, CSR, there's no land value, there's none of that to tax. And so that's just kind of swallowed into that.
But if I were to build a house on a piece of property in the country, they would.
Are you ag?
No, but
There you go.
that's the difference. So
That's
the
the
real
difference.
difference is it's considered agriculture.
That's how they tax
I'll
ag.
have to, I'll check into that. 'Cause
There
that's-
was a little, my husband brought this up, but it was true. There was a little strip joint in Adair County that burned down a few years ago. He said that strip joint generates more new revenue for the county than the $8 million addition at Rose Acres.
That's
I
interesting.
mean, yeah, it is.
Is that kind of sounds, sales then?
What's that?
Is that revenue, in penicillin sales?
I don't know. Well, it would be, taxed as a commercial entity.
Yeah.
Which goes back to my point that I've made for 15 years now. These big farms, once they hit 2,500 head or whatever number you wanna put in there, they are now industrial scale. They should be paying taxes like an industry pays taxes. And Farm Bureau's gonna scream, oh, the family farmer. Well, the family farmer would make that decision. He doesn't have to be industrial scale.
Yeah.
But right now, there's no decision to be made. They've been convinced, I'll bring my son in.
I have a quick question, just because I know the people from North County, you have to back up there. What other questions did you have?
The one other question I have is, you all might know, is, wasn't there some point in the eighties that Branstad took local control away? I think there was a bill in the legislature.
519.
What?
Well,
No.
519 allowed corporate ownership of hogs, which is what the industry. We never actually had local control in Iowa. We've never
Really?
had it.
Not
Yeah.
even in the eighties?
I
No,
think
we've
we
never
did.
had. That's how. I'll go get Hugh. Hugh knows this.
Yeah,
He
I
worked
think there
here
was,
for
I think there was a point
I don't think we've ever
where,
had local
I just kinda wanted to look that up if anybody knows.
Maybe he denied
We had
the
home rule,
legislation.
but that never,
No.
He could have
But
vetoed that
wasn't
bill.
Chuck the only
Yeah,
one that
vetoed
fought
it
for
or something.
ban on patent ownership? You guys did? Wasn't he the only
Oh,
one?
he's been vocal against patent ownership.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that's something I can give Chuck Brass is that.
Yeah, but vocally, what did you say against what?
Packer
Packer.
ownership.
Oh, right, okay.
Well, it seems like once that was lifted, it just turned into chaos.
and then he was also.
Maybe that's what I'm thinking, because that allowed corporate.
Yeah, fine.
All right, he knows local control.
There's
That's
never
right.
been local
Really?
control
Okay.
in Iowa. I'm sorry.
No,
People
that's-
said that, that's a lie. There's never been local control.
Really?
It's
So,
all-
so
never.
the state always.
It's always,
Was there ever legislation?
so we started fighting this issue back in 1990, 91.
And that-
Back then,
And what happened then? What-
it was state, it was, DNR was the one that was the permitting, construction permits. And it was a
Okay,
hog factory out in, it was a sow factory out in Carroll County that was large enough for construction. They used to do them animal weight units, or
Right.
animal weight, now it's
Right.
animal. There was never, and it, by the way, I'm sorry, for people, to believe, there was never any local control in
okay.
it. But House File 519 opened the door even more
And that was the one that was passed
in
in,
1995,
and that
with help
was-
from
and what did that
Republicans
do?
and Democrats.
What did that bill do?
What's that?
What did that bill do?
It, there was stuff like, it cemented, local control, or not local control.
State control.
It cemented state control.
That's
I mean,
probably
it
what
just
I'm thinking.
verified that. There was nuisance lawsuit protection that Tom Vilsack helped
Yeah.
write.
Yeah.
He was the state senator at that time. Tom Vilsack, his claim to fame was like, well, I perfected it. And it's just like, and then about 6 or 7 years later, it was declared unconstitutional because there was cases that were brought. But it was all sorts of that, and then weak separation distances and just weak
And-
regulations. It kind of codified all that stuff.
And didn't have corporate ownership of hogs too, right?
Well, Packer ownership was a different issue.
Right.
House File 519, we've never had local control.
House
We
File
just-
519, which one?
Essentially.
Which one is that?
That was the one that was,
Very
House
fake
File
and
5, that was the one that was
instrument
passed in
from the beginning.
95.
So they had talked
And that's when hog factories
Okay.
were becoming more and more of an issue,
and just
like
wanted
in
to
91,
get an idea
92,
of, like, what's
93.
And was that Branstad? Governor?
Oh, yeah.
That's probably-
And it was Democrats and Republicans voted for
Okay,
it.
thank you.
Yeah, they just want to get clear on what's going on.
Two sides of the same coin.
And exterior,
Thank
yeah.
you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much,
Yeah.
David.
All right.
Awesome. And Everett, take a sandwich home if you haven't had a sandwich yet.
Those are really good
You think
Yeah.
zone- I mean, it-
And the chips are good too.
We got you going now.
You said zone agriculture?
Talking about now you need to find the
Right.
right.
Right, right, right.
All right, thank you guys so much for coming down today. We will stay in touch. And Pam, thanks for jumping on the phone. I'm going to call you later today because we still need to write the agenda for Thursday's meeting.
You and